All right, friends, hello. We're going to start out today laying on our backs. Before you head to your back, you can see I have props at either end of my mat. I have a blanket where I'm going to rest my head. We're going to be on our back for a little bit, and we're going to come into a twist. So I always like to pad the back of my head. When you're twisting, I'd rather that your shoulders stay in contact with the floor, the back of the head gets some support. I'd rather that instead of you thinking like, okay, if I'm going to twist my knees off to the right, then my knees have to go all the way up to the right, and it's more important to get my legs to the ground. Really, I'd rather you support the back of the head. That should help ease yourself into the twist a little bit, and your knees, so that you can keep your shoulders in contact with the floor. And I'll show you what that looks like if you're not quite sure. So that's the first thing. The second thing is having props on either side of your mat when you rotate. So like I said, again, you don't have to get all the way to the floor if the legs don't get there. There's a lot of things that can inhibit the full rotation of a twist, such as tightness or tension in the low back, glutes, or hamstrings. So I'm going to grab my timer. So if you need to go grab a few extra props, you have time. When you're ready, we'll come on down to the back, take a couple of minutes to adjust. If you're going to use something underneath the back of the head, make sure it feels comfortable and supportive. And then again, I recommend just using something shallow, like not a huge bulky pillow. I don't really want your head higher than your sternum. I'd rather have your neck neutral. That's just from an anatomical perspective of keeping the spine in alignment, at least the neck and the shoulders. Okay, so we'll start off by crossing that right leg all the way over the left leg, like you're sitting cross-legged in a chair. Okay, so right leg all the way on top of left leg, like you're sitting cross-legged in a chair, or if you're familiar with eagle legs. But don't wrap that right ankle around left ankle. If you don't know what I'm talking about, good, don't worry about it. Okay, so we're gonna lift the legs up, see if you can reach for your outer shin bones or your outer ankles, and pull your feet wide. So I'm trying to pull my knees into my chest. I'm reaching my hands down to my opposite ankles or opposite shins, or maybe even just the outer knees, just whatever you can get a hold of in the lower legs. And we're just doing a little prep work here. So we're just saying, hey, hey hips, hey hips, how you doing today? Where do you feel tight? And be gentle. You don't have to pull super hard on the feet. Just give them a little attention, give them a little warning that you're going to ask them to do something for you. If you're looking at me, I'm rocking a little bit side to side. I think this feels good on the low back, so that's an option. And start to become aware of your breath. To the best of your ability, can you breathe in and out through the nose? Good. And now we're going to let go of the legs and stretch the arms out wide like a big capital T. You can keep your legs crossed, and you might need to uncross them if the hips are too tight, okay? We're going to take both our knees off to your left. So both knees off to the left. And then again, like I said before, I'm not worried about how close my knees or my legs get to the floor. I'm sliding a prop underneath my inner right knee, or maybe it's the outer left thigh. So wherever you need the props, so that you can maintain a broad chest facing the ceiling, shoulders down the back and in contact with the floor. So knees off to the left, right shoulder still in contact with the floor, and if that's popping up off the ground, you need to come out of your twist a little bit. You need to add some props underneath your legs. And it's not like it's not one size fits all, right? So each of us are going to need different level of props. So you really need to get good at listening to your body, honoring its limitations, and adding props where you need them. This is a pretty intense twist, okay? Even for me. So if with the legs crossed, those eagle-like legs, if it's too much on your low back, your hips, whatever, just uncross the legs and take a simple twist with right leg stacked on top of left leg. So make good decisions. Like we tell our children, make good decisions. That applies to you too. Once you find that kind of Goldilocks effect where you can start to relax and settle into stillness here, you can close your eyes if you like. Continue to breathe in and out through the nose. And see if you can just start to slow the breath down even. We're a little over halfway through our hold. So see if you can continue to deepen your breath. Notice if you need to make any changes to your setup and your props. If you're feeling pretty good as is, here's what I would offer. Just visualizing on the inhale, more space in the body. So as you breathe in, you could visualize or just imagine what it would be like to create space in the body just by virtue of breathing in. And then as you exhale, can you imagine getting softer and letting go of any tension? Maybe getting a little bit heavier with each exhale. Breathing in lightness and spaciousness. Breathing out tension and stress. Let's take 2 more breaths here. Nice and slow. Take your time on your exit. Start to unwind the spine and then unwind the legs. If your legs are still crossed, uncross them. And then Try not to be in a hurry to get to the second side because we are going to pause before we set up our second side with our feet planted. Adjust your hips back in line with your shoulders. You can either stretch your legs out long or keep your knees bent and your feet planted. Just do a few pelvic rocks here. If you're not familiar with pelvic rock, it's a small movement. So you're just rolling to the very tip of your tailbone, and then you're pressing your low back down. So when your tailbone presses down, your low back slightly lifts. When your low back presses down, your tailbone slightly lifts, but the pelvis doesn't come off the mat at all. So small movement. Deep, slow belly breaths. And we'll start our prep for our second side. So this time that left leg is gonna cross all the way on top of the right thigh, like you're sitting cross-legged in a chair, or kind of like eagle legs. And then you're gonna pull that whole thing towards the belly. Okay, so legs lift. You can use your hands to reach for your opposite ankles or your opposite shins, or even just hold the outer edges of the knees. And you're just trying to pull your feet a little bit wider away from one another. And again, you're just checking out how this feels. It might feel different than the first side. And so just notice how it feels. If you want to, you can add that little bit of a rock side to side. And then we'll let go with the hands. So stretch your arms out wide like a capital T. And knees, legs, they can stay crossed. Okay. And then you're going to tip your whole lower half off to your right. So both knees off to your right. And the legs can stay crossed as they are, or the legs can uncross. Again, it could be a really big twist for you. It could be a really big sensation. This is certainly a lot for me in my hips. And it feels really different on this side. So I'm supporting the inner edge of my left knee with a block. You can use any kind of prop you have at home. It doesn't have to be a block. It can be pillows. It can be blankets. It can be your dog's warm body, if they'll sit still for you. If you have a dog. A lot of factors here, right? So let's make do with what we have. Get creative. Support yourself appropriately. See if you can connect your left shoulder blade to the floor. If that's not happening, add some height underneath the knees. Okay, prop the knees. Don't force the knees to get to the floor before the shoulders can stay connected. So don't compromise the form of this shape just because you think, oh, I got to get my knees to the ground. No, you don't. And start to settle into your stillness, whatever that's going to look like for you. Even if that means uncrossing the legs, that's totally fine. Any twist variation here is welcome. If you have a favorite, feel free to take it. But do find a place where you can settle in, where you can eventually stop fidgeting, where you can be still. And that allows you to breathe deeply in and out through the nose. And if it's helpful, you could imagine or visualize that as you breathe in, you are breathing in lightness, spaciousness. And as you breathe out, you're releasing tension and stress. The body gets heavier, the muscles and the bones relax. Less than a minute here. See if you can time 4 breath cycles with the remaining amount of time. So each breath cycle should take you about 10 seconds. So you got to slow your breath way down. If you're counting up to 5 on an inhale, your exhale would be 5 counts. That would equal 10 seconds for 1 breath cycle. It's probably a lot slower than you think it is. Last breath here. Slowly start to unwind. Take your time with your exit. If you still have your legs crossed, uncross them. Shift your hips back in line with your shoulders if you feel a little bit offset. And then you can decide whether you want to stretch the legs out or keep the knees bent. I'll do a few pelvic rocks here in between shapes. So you're just finding a little bit of movement in the pelvis. It's like that motion towards the tip of the tailbone to the low back. All right, so our next shape, I'll give you 2 options. You can stay as you are on your back and simply cross the legs like crisscross applesauce. Notice which shin is in front. Okay, so I'm crossing my shins. My left shin is in front of my right shin, and then I'm letting my knees fall out to the side. And that might feel kind of like you were taking butterfly pose on your back, where you have the soles of the feet together and the knees out wide. This is something a little bit different. I'm asking you to keep your shins crossed, not getting the soles of the feet together, okay? So think crisscross applesauce. Okay, so there's option number 1. Option number 2, taking that same cross of the legs, you can sit up and fold over the legs. This might be a little bit more sensation on the back body and less on the hips, just depending on where you're tight. If you're folding forward over the shins or the legs, you might take a prop underneath the forehead, depending on how far your body is going to let you fold. And so it might be a completely different sensation. For me, when I take this seated and I come into a fold, I feel a lot of sensation in my low back and my glutes. When I take that same shape with my legs crossed and I lay down on my back, I feel a lot of sensation in my hips, both adductor and abductor, so inner and outer edges of the hips. And so you might play around with what kind of sensation you want, where you want to feel something, where you feel like it would be most beneficial for you. You know your body best. And also what's sustainable, because these are longer holds. We've been holding for about 5 minutes each shape. So what is sustainable for that period of time? If you're really making a really strong effort to forward fold and your knees are really high, like they're higher than your hips, and your neck is bothering you and you're clenching your teeth, I'd recommend just skipping that altogether and laying down on your back. Just remember what this class is called, restorative yoga. If you're adding a lot of extra tension to the body, most likely you're not tapping into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is a system of rest and digest. And that is the namesake of this practice. One thing I would say too is, it can be a lot on the hips to lay down on your back. The knees can be high and there can be a lot of tension there too. And so if that's the case, you can slide props underneath the outer edges of the thighs or the knees. So just always thinking about ways to support your body in these shapes. Okay, so we have about 5 more breaths here. You can time that breath, see if you can match it to these last 50 seconds. Should take you about 5 breath cycles if you're keeping with that 5 count inhale, 5 count exhale. All right, and if you're on your back, you can uncross the legs. If you're in that seated forward fold, you can sit up. We will uncross the legs and then opposite shin in front. For me, that's my right shin. Just make sure you're getting both sides. Sensation tends to be pretty different. And then we'll settle back in. And just always being mindful that each side might need a different level of support. Sometimes one side is way easier than the other. So that means sometimes you might need less support. Sometimes you might need more. And this is why this is such an introspective practice. You get to know your body and its needs and how it talks to you, because your body is always talking to you.
And the invitation here is to listen. What do you need right now? How can you support your body in a way that allows you to breathe deeply in and out through your nose? How can you learn to soften chronically tight muscles? Let go of places where you chronically hold stress. It is a practice. It's not about being perfect. That's why we call it a practice. About 5 more breath cycles here. See if you can match that to the 50 seconds left in this shape. Again, that means about 10 seconds per one breath cycle. And just as a reminder, one breath cycle includes both the inhale and the exhale. If you are seated, you can start to sit up, unwind the spine. If you are laying down, you can uncross the legs and maybe hug the knees into the chest. If you're coming from that seated position, we'll lay down on our backs. If that's how you'd like to take Shavasana, you could also take your legs up the wall or sit in a meditation position. We're just going to find something that's comfortable for you. We'll take about 2 minutes for Shavasana. And again, the idea in Shavasana is to become still, to completely relax the body, to let go of any gripping anywhere, to breathe deep in and out through the nose. Just to let it go and let it rest. Feel free to stay in your Shavasana longer. I always recommend more time if you have it. If you need to move on with your day, you can start to slowly awaken through fingertips and toes. Take your time. If you're coming from flat on your back, you can bend your knees and roll off to a side. And then eventually making your way to an upright seat. Just briefly taking a moment to sit up tall. Allow the shoulders to stack over hips and the ears to stack over the shoulders. Grow tall through the top of the head. Breathe in. Breathe out. And just like we've been practicing this entire time, breathing in and out through the nose. And then gathering the hands together at the heart and bowing the chin into the chest. And just briefly taking a moment here to honor your effort and your practice with reverence and gratitude. May you remember that you will always be okay. May you find a light that guides you and keeps you safe. May you have hope, health, and happiness along the way. Namaste, yogis. I hope you all enjoyed your practice. I really appreciate you showing up today, as always. You make these classes possible, and I appreciate you. Take care of yourselves. Bye.